Well, the Christmas presents keep rolling in for the Gonzaga Bulldogs. We got news last week that Ben Gregg, the 2021 recruit, would be eligible immediately to play. Zags play Virginia this weekend and Tony Bennett's squad. But we got some interesting news yesterday that we want to talk about this morning. So on Tuesday, two experts over at 24/7 Sports changed their crystal ball predictions. That's Travis Branham and Jerry Meyer. And we've heard some rumblings over the last couple days that a big target, and honestly a late target for these Gonzaga Bulldogs, and that's Hunter Sallis, has started to have a little change of heart. He has been crystal balled to go to Kentucky. He's got a lot of schools who would love to have him step on campus. But yesterday, after receiving some inside information, first Travis went ahead and changed his crystal ball prediction, which let's give a little insight to what that means. He's been correct on all 58 of his predictions so far in the class of 2021. Now, you can change your crystal ball all the way up to when they announce, but so far, he's been right on all of his decisions. He had Kentucky, and overnight, he decided to change it to the Zags. And right after that, Jerry Meyer said, after talking to Travis and learning some information, I too have changed my crystal ball prediction to have Hunter Sallis going to Gonzaga.
Yeah, huge news coming out, of the 24/7 website there. And you just got to love seeing it, man. Obviously, there's a number of things that lead to this. This isn't, something that just happens on a whim. A player like that who was really what we considered to kind of be a lock for Kentucky. If you followed Gonzaga recruiting, Hunter Sallis was somebody that we talked a lot more about a year ago. That was somebody who we were on early as a program. But it became pretty evident that he was leaning towards Gonzaga, and it seemed like the Zags had kind of moved on a little
Towards
bit.
Kentucky.
Yes, excuse me. He was leaning towards Kentucky. It seemed like the Zags had kind of moved on a little bit, but credit to this Gonzaga coaching staff. We've talked about their recruiting a lot, and we've seen it year after year, player after player. Jalen Suggs is a great example. When they decide they want a player, they put the full court press on, and it's not always a very loud full court press. They're not, very out in the media about what they're doing, but these guys continually work behind the scenes, and it looks like it might be paying off again.
Well, let's dive into who Hunter Sallis is for those of you that don't know. He's a 6'5" combo guard, really, from Omaha, Nebraska. He's the number 6 overall player in the 2021 class. He did cut his list of finalists to 8 last month. On that list would be Gonzaga, Kentucky, Kansas, Creighton, North Carolina, Iowa State, Oregon, and UCLA. He has said that he will wait until spring to make a decision, but I think in all fairness, coming as far as this program has come, a decade ago, just to make the list of 8 finalists would have been an honor, not something you really take seriously. And I think that our minds have needed to shift so quickly for this program that it's getting to the point you have the number 1 team in the country. You have a program who has now shown with Mark Few that they can bring in a guy like Jalen Suggs, feature them on day one. And it used to be that, don't go to Gonzaga. They've got a nice team, but you're going to get buried in the WCC. No one's going to see you play. Well, now this is a team that's playing on national television at 9 a.m., 10 a.m. on CBS. And so you don't get to have that conversation anymore. It's weird to say that it's gotten to that point that when you see Gonzaga on that list, it's like, oh, crap, well, the Zags are on there? Because that's what we used to think about Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina. So I think in all fairness, when that list came out, we said, oh, cool, that's nice, but Kentucky, Kansas, North Carolina, UCLA, do we have a real shot? The answer is yes, and I think a big part of that is the success that Mark Few's had so far this year with Jalen Suggs.
Absolutely. When you are a top 10 guard, top 15 guard, you want to come in and you kind of expect to be that dude on a program. And you want to know that a coach and a program knows how to handle a player like that and to put them in a position to succeed. Gonzaga obviously has always done a great job of putting their players in a position to succeed, but we've never really seen it with that top 10 guard. obviously Jalen Suggs this year has come in from day one, been that guy on the team. But what Mark Few has done as far as putting him in positions to succeed has seen him rise up draft boards dramatically through all of 5 games this year. And that's exactly what somebody like Hunter Sallis wants to see. They can come in, they can be successful, they can develop and grow their game and get drafted, in the lottery. That's ultimately the goal for a lot of these guys. So that's been an absolutely huge piece. And, of course, there has been a few other things going on. There's been Kentucky kind of making some waves in college basketball a little bit, if you will, this year that could have played into it a little bit. But ultimately, I think what Jalen Suggs has done has really been huge for this program. And I think Hunter Sallis is just the start of these top-tier these top-tier guards looking at Gonzaga as a viable option. I mean, you said it yourself, man. We used to think that, these other blue bloods are on the list. We're not in there anymore. And now those tables have turned. You mentioned 4 schools. 3 of them are off to some not typical starts for those schools. And the 4th being Kansas, Gonzaga beat on national television this year. So the tides are changing. Gonzaga is changing in this atmosphere of college basketball, and they are now at the top. And a lot of people don't want to call them a blue blood yet. A lot of people outside of the program don't want to say that yet. But, I mean, it's pretty clear at this point. This is not new. This is not going away. And Gonzaga is only going to continue to be in the top 5s, top 3s of guys like Hunter Sallis.
Well, I think it's the evolution of Mark Few in this program, because 5 years ago, I don't think Mark Few's giving guys any sort of guarantee when they're recruiting. But listen, if you're a 5-star recruit, you're the dude, you're a top 10 player in the nation, you want to know that, hey, listen, if I'm going to move across the country and I'm going to invest my future with you, I don't want to play any of this like, hey, you got to earn your spot sort of a deal. I think that the traditionalists want to hear that. Mm-hmm. But we heard it a little bit with Ben Gregg in his recruiting. Is Ben Gregg said, listen, and this was, early this fall, he said, the last 2 weeks before my decision, Few and the coaching staff called me and said, hey, listen, here's the thing. We're going to have a position available, and next year we think that you're the guy who can come in and start right away. That's not stuff that I think Few and this coaching staff was saying 5 years ago.
No, I'd agree with that.
And so I think Few knows, hey, listen, Jalen's gone after this year. And so to put a call into a guy like Hunter Sallis and say, listen, we want you to come in and we want you to be our starting point guard on day one, those are the type of guarantees that these guys are going to require to commit to a school that I'm not sure Gonzaga was willing to give 5-10 years ago. Yeah. But I think that's what it's going to take to push them over the top. Looking at that 2021 class, obviously Ben Gregg a part of that. He's now on campus. Let's not forget Caden Perry, traditional back to the basket 5 out of Battleground, Washington, and then Fambo Zhang as well, who was another recent addition to this 2021 class. We can't do a 2021 video without mentioning that we could also be looking at Chet Holmgren being added to that class. And so the riches get richer for sure. Well, let's go back to another reason other than the success that Mark Few's had with Jalen Suggs as to why this crystal ball may have changed, and that is the news coming out of Kentucky. And I'll tell you what, we're going to read the tweets here in a minute. If you haven't had a chance, go and watch the video as to what happened with this whole scenario. There was an incident that happened with Cameron Fletcher, a 4-star guard who is at Kentucky, very highly recruited. He showed some emotion towards the end of a game, was shown crying on the sideline, leaving the bench area. Obviously something that you don't want to see out of a player. But the big issue that's happening is where it was brought to the public light by Coach John Calipari. He has asked Cam Fletcher to step away from the program. I'm going to read the tweets right now, and I want to get your reaction, Steve. This is a series of tweets from John Calipari just a day ago. He said, "We've asked Cam Fletcher to take some time and step away from the team. He needs to reflect and do some soul searching to get his priorities in order. Any attitude or actions that are detrimental to this team will not be tolerated, and that goes for everyone on the team." He went on to say, We have a culture here that's been built over the last 11 years. That's how long he's been at Kentucky. And in capital letters, it will not change. Through the good times and the bad, this culture is meant to change individuals and change maturity levels. This hurts our team, but it's about Cam and his future. I talked to Cam and his mother, and they know that I care about him and love him, but they also understand that there are changes that need to be made. It is his job to decide whether he can perform within this culture, both on and off the court.
Terrible. It's just things you hate to see is a coach publicly dragging an 18-year-old young man through Twitter for no reason, right? Let's step back. This is a guy who showed some emotion on the bench and made a poor decision.
An 18-year-old.
An 18-year-old who showed some emotion and made a poor decision by leaving the court early on a team that's now 1-5. That was expected to, of course, be a top 10 team like they have been for the last decade. This is not a young man who went out and, let's say, made a really bad foul, tried to hurt somebody on the court. This is not somebody who got in legal trouble. This is somebody who showed some emotion and made a rash decision. I mean, to do that based off of that, to me, is just ridiculous. And, I've thought this for a long time. John Calipari is not necessarily a elite developer of players.
No.
Right? He's a guy who has brought in elite talent.
He's an elite recruiter.
He's an elite recruiter, and he can get talent to play together. Right? I will say that as well. But you don't see guys come in, and they're not dramatically different at the end of the season than they were at the start of it. He finds good players, he gets them to play together, and he does well, and obviously has had great success with that. However, at some point, you're going to hit a roadblock, whether you don't get the talent you thought you would, or maybe just, guys don't click the way you thought they would, and now you've got a coach. And you know what, man, if this is in a season where Kentucky is normally as good as they are, and he says something like this, I think it's almost even a little bit easier to stomach. But when you're 1-5 and then you're throwing a player under the bus, I mean, that is just a bad look for me. I mean, you're the coach. Step up, own this. You are 1-5. Own it. That's on you. You have elite talent on your team. You should not be 1-5. So for him to throw a player under the bus, it's not acceptable. And if you're a top guard coming in, how do you think, like, an NBA executive sees that? How does that change their perception of a player? So now if you're Hunter Sallis and you're looking at going to Kentucky, do you want to risk Kentucky not clicking and you getting thrown under the bus and your own coach making you look worse in the eyes of NBA executives? I mean, it's a discussion that has to be had. Is that something that's going through Hunter's head? Of course, we don't know that. I haven't personally called him up and asked him. But it's something you have to ask. It's something you have to discuss. And for sure, it doesn't help. I mean, it's just, I was blown away. I've obviously followed college basketball a long time. I've seen Calipari talk a lot. I've seen him go through elite, all-time great college basketball teams. And I've seen him go through, teams that aren't quite as good. I've never seen him do something like this. And it really puts a lot of things into question. And, hey, I mean, as a Gonzaga fan, send a thank you to John Calipari, because whether or not Hunter comes here, that definitely made a difference. It's something he sees, and props to Gonzaga. I think they obviously probably jumped on things right away and have just continued to stay in Hunter's ear. And for them to be now in his top schools, the crystal ball going their way, it just shows what players think of this program and what players think of Mark Few. They know Mark Few's never doing anything like that. They know they're going to develop in this program, and now they're seeing with Jalen Suggs that, hey, if they put in the work, they can be a top, number 1, number 2 overall pick in this NBA draft.
We get caught up with these prospects, watching highlight films and getting excited, but we do forget a lot of times that these are 18-year-old kids. Mm-hmm. And if you're sending your son or daughter to go play for a coach, you want to know that they're going to be taking care of your child while they're there. And so I think this is a lot different. If Cam Fletcher was a 3 or 4 year player who's been in the program. If this was a senior, I think it's a lot different conversation. This is a freshman who his parents invested in John Calipari and said, hey, we're going to trust you to watch after our son. And guess what? When you make that investment and you become a part of that team's family, you get the good and the bad. And so I like to think about if this happened, which I honestly, I'll go as far to say, hey, Cal, maybe you need to look in the mirror and ask yourself why kids are doing this on your sideline. Is it
because you're 1-5?
Is it a lack of respect? Is it a lack of control of your team? I have a very hard time seeing this ever happening on a Gonzaga sideline because of what this coaching staff has built. But if it did, if this happened, let's just say that Dom Harris, Julian Strother had a moment on the Gonzaga sideline. I think you see a coach console them. I think you see a closed-door discussion. Maybe you see a kid not get a start or get sat for a half, but you would never see the public humiliation that happened. And
no,
I think that if you really are down to 8 schools and you're waiting to, that's why he said, and it sounds like we have a pretty mature kid here. I'm assuming from all the things I've heard out of Hunter Sallis that it sounds like he comes from a pretty strong upbringing with some pretty traditional values. For a kid to come out and say, hey, listen, there's no reason for me to decide until spring because I want to wait until I have all the information possible. That's a very mature statement. And guess what? When you do things like that, more information like this becomes available. And I think that for Hunter, I think for his family to say, hey, we're going to send you off to school. We want to make sure that you're taken care of. Like you said, Mark Few and this program have really become the backbone of college basketball. If you don't want to call them a blue blood, call them a backbone because guess what? They make the Sweet 16 every single year. They make the NCAA tournament every single year. And you know that they're going to make that kid better for the NBA. And they're going to take care of them. And that's what's really exciting to see for the future of this program. As Calipari reminds me of, you have a lot of high school coaches out there who know the X's and O's, whether it be football or basketball, but they're not right for kids. And John Calipari, who has been in the NBA, is a brilliant basketball mind. Whether or not he is right for 18, 19-year-old kids, I'm not sure. But when you have a guy like Mark Few, you have guys like Tommy Lloyd and other guys they've added, Brian Michelson, to this coaching staff. You have some guys who know the X's and O's better than anyone in this country, but they're also just good dudes. And I think that the family atmosphere that they've created up here in Spokane is something that we're starting to see the rest of the nation catch up to. And Jalen Suggs is not going to be the last top recruit to commit to Gonzaga. No matter what Hunter Sallis decides to do, we're going to continue, like you said, to hear more and more names being brought up and more guys who end up stepping foot here in Spokane for this Gonzaga program because they're winning basketball games and they're doing it the right way.